Hello. Well, I'm Elias, and thank you very much for introducing me. And yeah, it's what you sort of know who I am. But so let me start about sort of a brief intro of what my journey with BDD before I get into sort of the exposure thing, so to set the scene. So I don't know if any of you were at the podcast this morning around 12, but if you weren't, let me just sort of I'll update you. So basically, I started having BDD and OCD as well around sort of 2017-ish. 2016, 2017, and it was brought upon by lots of bullying through school, and I had a lot of appearance issues focused on my face. So I couldn't really. It got to the point where I was wearing makeup. I couldn't wear my glasses. Couldn't really see people. It got to the point where I couldn't see my parents. Not even so. I was in my room, so locked in my room, not being able to do anything for quite a few months. Several sort of 8-9 months in the end. And before I was an inpatient, I got an inpatient at the Priory, North London. So that was sort of my first step to recovery, and that was mum managed to get me a place there, and that was the first step. But basically, it really was sort of, at least for me, sudden, the recovery, sort of about 2 months, but it was really all because of CBT. Now, CBT, if you don't know what it is, it stands for Cognitive Behavioural Therapy. And basically, some of you might know this, some of you might not. It's when you do something that you're not comfortable with, your levels of stress go up, right? As you do the thing that you're not comfortable with. Now, if you, so what you tend to do is, what you're drawn to do is to stop it. Withdraw, I don't want to do it because it's stressing me out, which is a natural reaction to it, right? But with CBT, what the aim is to just keep going, right? So you do the stressful thing, it stresses you out, but you don't stop doing it. You keep doing it until you sit in the stress. And next time you do it, the stress will be lower, so you'll have less stress. Well, that's the theory behind it. And it works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me, and it worked for a lot of people. And so CBT was really the way that I beat my BDD worries, my appearance worries, and my OCD. And so today I just wanted to sort of go through something that helped me, the examples that I did, what I did, how it helped me, and also how maybe you can go out if you have appearance issues, what you can do. So pretty much my appearance issues were all concerned with my face. It was just my face. And I really couldn't stand people looking at it. So I used to wear a scarf and a hat or a balaclava, so you could only see my eyes really. And so now I'm fine. So for example, I have a spot here and there, and it really doesn't mind. I don't mind. But I used to be really, really, worried about it. And basically, what I did at the Priory was step by step. So when I first got there, like I'd been for the past year or so, I couldn't let anyone see my face. So I had a scarf and a hat or a balaclava, like I said, and I would eat in my room. So I would get the food delivered, I'd eat in my room, wouldn't go out, would do sort of social things, sort of like activities with the other people inside the sideboard, but I wouldn't be able to participate fully because, of course, I couldn't really, my face wasn't showing. And I was 17 at the time, and I had a session. I used to have sessions with the adults because I was old enough. I was able to go into the therapy groups with the adults, and we had a speaker. I remember we had a speaker, and they were saying about how it was important to sometimes just take the leap and do things, and even though they're uncomfortable, just do them. Just go about and do it, and just try. What's the worst that can happen? Just try. I mean, I was pretty much at the lowest point in my life at that time. And so I thought, well, let's do it. And so I got back to my room, and I do realize, actually, as a side note, I do realize that it took a lot of effort from I know it sounds like, oh, here we go, I did it. It took a lot of effort. And I do understand that for some people, it might be quite hard to just do that thing. So for those people, and for anyone really, even for me, I think it was helpful to just take it slowly. So I jumped into the pool at the deep end, but it's not always advisable to do that. In fact, it's always advisable to start slowly. So, but you can do that with exposure. That's the beauty of exposures, because you can do it you can go as far as you want, right? You can go as far as you want, or as little far as you want, or and so you can you can sort of tailor it to what you want to do. And so basically what I did was I just one day from day to next, I just took my scarf and the hat off. I had a lot of makeup. This was in the hospital, and I had a lot of makeup, but my appearance worries were because I thought that people thought I was ugly. So I thought, okay, they're judging my face. They're thinking I'm awful. I look dreadful, and they're not gonna, they're not going to be able to take me seriously because they're going to think I'm ugly, and it's going to be all horrible. But it wasn't like that. It was actually, well, it wasn't, because once I managed to take the scarf and the hat off and actually go and I went back up, because it was the ground floor. I went back up to the ward, and everyone was incredibly nice, as you'd think. They were all going through similar issues, so they were all very helpful. They were all very supportive, and that really helped me, because I thought, okay, wait a minute, it's sort of decoupling the thoughts. And that's another important thing, is decoupling the thoughts from so you have to decouple the intrusive thoughts, because they're a big part of the BDD and OCD as well. You have to decouple those from your actual sort of normal thoughts, right? So you think, okay, I'm getting intrusive thoughts that I'm ugly, but that's not me talking. To an extent, it's not really you. It's the mental illness that's taken a hold of your head, and that's what it's talking. And I think decoupling those thoughts from your normal day-to-day thoughts really is quite important, because it basically just makes it so that you can separate who you are as a person from your illness, and so you can tackle it better. So it becomes a you versus your illness, not you versus yourself, because that's another big thing. When I started, I felt quite sort of, or put down by the fact that I had to sort of fight against myself to get rid of this BDD. But then once I realized that it wasn't me fighting against myself, it was me as a person fighting against the illness, that really put it into perspective. And also what it helps is that you feel a lot less. I felt quite a lot of shame at the start of it, for being ill, for not being able to go through it, for not, being able to beat it. But once I put it into that perspective, I realized, wait a minute, it's not, my fault. I'm not. It's just like if you break a leg, it's very similar, and there is a big stigma around it, but that's ultimately what it is. And it's really important to put yourself in that position where you can go, wait a minute, I shouldn't be angry or upset or saddened or disheartened at myself. I should be annoyed and frustrated at, or just being able to think about that it's not you, it's the illness, right? And so so I started doing these exposures one by one. And I started quite slowly, apart from taking the scarf and hat off. But that was the first step, really. I was quite early on in my stay at the hospital. So what I do is, the hospital was in a park. So with my therapist, we'd leave the unit, go on walks. At the start, they were quite short walks, and we wouldn't really go near people. We just because it was hard for me to still see people and let them see me in the state that I was. And so, went around the park, went a bit, and then we came back. And then we'd go again the next day or the day after, or, in 3 days or so. And it would be a longer walk, then maybe a bit longer, then maybe a bit longer. And that's the really key thing. It's the element of just consistency, because you don't have to go, all out and then all out plus 10 and then all out plus 100. And, it's the important thing is being consistent. So sorry if you hear noises, it's the neighbors. So, but what you have to do is just sort of keep at it, keep going, keep thinking, okay, today I don't feel so great, but I'm going to try something, try something. Even if it's small, it just keeps the momentum going. It doesn't have to be sort of a logarithmic scale of exposure stress. It can just be step by step. And some steps can be smaller than others, and that's absolutely fine. I think that's a really important thing to sort of realize. And that goes hand in hand with the fact that it's not always going to be that it's going to get better, right? Even for me, even my journey of recovery, some days I still felt in the hospital, I still felt really ugly. So I felt that I couldn't do as much of an exposure sort of stress level that I could the day before. And, the first times this happened, I felt quite bad. And I talked to my therapist about it, and he said, well, there's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not you being weak. It's not you being a coward. It's not at all. It's just that some days by virtue, this is for every single person in the world. Some days are worse than others, and that's fine. And that can be the same with with your recovery from mental illness. Some days can be worse, some days can be better, but it's important to realize that once you're getting better, the trend is going to be upwards. And so even if a good thing actually is to look back, and even at the start of it, it can be quite impactful to look back and see, wow, even a week, I couldn't imagine myself doing this, which is a small thing, but it's still really big in the context of what you're doing. Don't look at it in the global context, look at it in the context of what you're doing and think, wow, for example, for me, I never thought at the time, I never thought I could go out without, wearing this much makeup. And let's say I only had foundation and not concealer, right? Which is like, we think foundation and concealer are quite similar, but you're going, well, for me, it was really big because I'd taken one whole element out. So I just put foundation and not concealer as well on top of all the spots, right? So that's already, in the general term, you think that's just one step, but in the context of what your recovery, it's actually really important. Another important thing is to really celebrate those little wins or big wins, and just think and be proud of yourself, because it is hard. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to get through. And you should really, every step of the way, you should be proud of yourself for doing it, because it's incredibly brave. It's an incredibly brave thing to do. And so, I did those exposures, and then I went to London a bit. So by the way, if anyone has any questions, I don't know if you can ask on the chat, but if you can, I'll be happy to answer them. No problem. So I'll keep it open in case. Yes. So we used to go to London. First, again, lots of makeup. We used to go around sort of the Priory, out of the grounds, but around sort of what the place was around there. And then it started going a lot more. So I started going on the tube, started going to other places in London, started going to more crowded places in London. And that was really hard initially, because I thought, and that's when some of those days I thought, well, that's quite hard to go on the tube, because I don't know if you've ever been to the tube in London or any sort of metro station. They're always, not now with COVID, but they're very packed, full of people, pressed against each other like sardines, lots of eye contact, lots of, being close to each other. And that was really challenging, but it was probably one of the most rewarding exposures, in the sense of how much better it pushed me along on my journey to recovery, because being so close to so many people really drove the point home that everyone is really, especially in public, they're minding their own business, right? They're not going around scrutinizing every single person. And for me, the problem is I was focused on my face, because I have autism, so I find it quite hard to read people's expressions. So I have to learn it, and so I've learned it, and I have to look at people's faces, to get an idea of what they're thinking, of how they're feeling, because it doesn't come naturally. So that's why I'm always very focused on people's faces, most of it. And so that's probably why, and I'm pretty sure that's why, for me, the appearance anxiety was related to facial, to how I looked, how my face looked. And going to the tube, and especially because so much of the non-verbal communication with humans is focused on your face. People look at your face, but they don't scrutinize it, but they do look at it when they talk to you. They look at your face, right? And so having so many people look at my face and not have any sort of signs of disgust, not wincing, not doing anything, just really drove the point home that actually it was my illness. I didn't look ugly. It was just my thoughts, my intrusive thoughts, that in my head made me look ugly. And so doing exposures like that, and so it kept going, and we went to a department store, really busy department store. I always forget what the name was, but ordering food, speaking to the cashiers, speaking to people, I think was the hardest, because by nature, when you're speaking to someone, it really is eye contact, right? Normally you just have eye contact unless you're walking beside each other or something like that. But normally in a person-to-person situation, you have eye contact, and it's quite intense for someone whose whole sort of worry is their face. And so basically, I think for me that was the hardest, and yet the most insightful, in the sense of realizing that, wait a minute, I don't actually have that problem that I think I have, because it's just my illness. right? And so doing things like that, doing small things like that, and all big things like that is really important. And another really important thing is that I also had not just BDD, I mean this is BDD, but an example, it's OCD as well. OCD is another sort of, it also is a purveyor, it sort of well, it causes intrusive thoughts in your head, right? So you think, oh, if I touch that, then I'll get ill. If I touch that, then I might die because of, illnesses. I might get something. I might, and it's not true, but your head thinks that. And so another thing with OCD, which was also quite big for me, was, going out, sitting on the grass, sitting on pavement, touching the pavement, touching the floor. I think was a really big one for me. I couldn't touch the floor. I couldn't, eat stuff that touched the floor and things like that. And now I can because of that exposure sort of setting. And it really drives the point home that, for example, when I started therapy, not inpatient therapy, but just sort of normal therapy, and with the therapist back a few years, well, a year or so before I went to the hospital, I did a bit of CBT, and we'd go stuff. I couldn't really touch coins and things like that because I thought, everyone's touched coins, and I was with OCD and I couldn't really go out. And I used to, go and touch coins and try and see, and that helped a bit, but it wasn't as frequent because I wasn't doing them on my own, right? So I was going to the therapist once a week or twice a week, I can't quite remember, but it wasn't every day. I'd do the exposure with her, then go back home, and then nothing, right? And go to the therapist, do the exposure, and nothing, right? Whereas in the hospital, I do at least 1, 2, 3, 10 exposures every day. Doesn't matter how many, but the more ideally the better, unless it's too many and then you get sort of at the start. So don't do too many at the start. But I was doing more and a bit more and a bit more every day and a bit more every day. And it's that consistency that really is the problem. And I was incredibly lucky to be able to be, in an inpatient unit because I was cared for, and people were looking after me, and they were helping me do these exposures. And I realized that, it's easy because now I'm better and it's easy for me to say this, but it really is important to just do something every day, because if you don't have the opportunity to be in an inpatient ward, or you're not getting therapy, every day. And I think just having someone that, who can help you, for me, with my parents, my mom, and dad as well, it was having someone like that who can help you and maybe go through it with your therapist or whoever is helping you right now. Just sort of try and do something every day, because it's that consistency that just keeps it going up. Because if you think about it, right, so the stress level, so it's going up, and you do the exposure, and then you're sitting with it, you're staying with the stress, it's going over you, and think, okay, this is bad, but I'm sort of managing, okay, and then it ends, the exposure event ends, and you go back down, the stress goes back down, and you think, oh, that's a relief, that's it, I never want to do that again. That's what I thought at the start. I thought, that's it, I'm never doing that again. And I hate it, because of course I did, because it made me really stressed. And so, and if you don't do anything the next day, you think, oh, wait, oh, that's good, I don't have to do it again, then it's fine. And it's not you being lazy, by the way. You shouldn't put yourself down if you're doing this, because it's not your fault. Again, it's because it's that compulsion of trying to escape, because it's a human mind thing. I think everyone has it. Stressful situation, I don't want to be in a stressful situation, right? Because no one wants to be in a stressful situation. And if you can avoid it, and the thing about exposures, they are avoidable because you don't have to do them, but it's right that you do, and you can avoid them, so you don't do them. And so not doing it every day sort of goes, oh, well, they're not essential, so I don't have to do them. But for me, going into the inpatient hospital meant that I had to do them every day. And to be honest, I also wanted to, because I had it, BDD for 2 years, and it was a really long time. And I wanted to get back to having a normal life like I did before. I wanted to go out with my friends, I wanted to see people, I wanted to be able to hug people, pet my dogs. I couldn't pet my dogs because I just couldn't, because of the OCD. So I couldn't even. I had a glove that I'd put on, and they'd go really happy when I put on. I had this green glove I'd put on, I'd pet them, and they'd love seeing me with the green glove because it meant that I could pet them. And they learned to not come into my room, so they'd sit on the doorsill and sort of look, because they couldn't come in because we had to hoover everything. And so I was very tired of of being ill. And so I thought, okay, I have to do this. I have to, no matter how hard it is, I have to try, I have to do these exposures. And I managed, but I get it that for some people it might be different. And so just doing something every day really is, it's a catalyst pretty much, because it drives, it doesn't get used up, but it drives forward your recovery. And so it got to the point where, I used to do it every day, and then I was discharged from the hospital. And this was quite a daunting experience. I was happy because, I don't know if you've ever been in a psych ward, but it's quite, apart from, all your issues, there's a lot of the environment can be quite daunting to be in, because, the other people in it, because of the situation, because of what it looks like and everything. And if you think about it, so it can be quite daunting, and it was. And so I was kind of glad, I was quite glad to be discharged. And they said, okay, you can go home now. But on the other hand, I was very worried, and Mum was very worried, and Dad was very worried, because we all thought, well, it's 2 months. They thought it was going to be 6 months, and it ended up being 2. And I said, well, it's 2 months. You think that, that they're okay enough to be able to leave the hospital and, go about it on their own? And I remember what my therapist said. He said, you have to be your own therapist, right? And that really struck with me. And I thought, well, I can't be my own therapist. I don't have 2 PhDs. I don't have that. I don't have any training. I don't have any, therapist. I haven't been, I don't. How can I be my own therapist when I was ill? How does that work? And then they explained, they said, well, you don't have to, you just have to realize that you know what to do, because we've told you, we've helped you through it, and you've been doing it, for the past months. So you know how to get better. But it's the point of, when you get teachers in schools, and you're mucking about, and they go, oh, you're only wasting your own time and stuff like that. And to a point, is it's not that, but it's in a similar vein, that going, well, now you know what to do, and you know what's right, and you've had help, and it doesn't matter how long you've had help for. I mean, shouldn't be ashamed if it's longer. It's whatever time you need is the right time. Let's put it that way. Whatever time you need is the right time. And it gets to that point where you go, okay, well, now I'm on my own. Well, I'm with parents. Maybe I'm seeing a therapist once a week instead of every day. Maybe it's once a month instead of once a week. The point is that you're more relying on yourself to be able to do these things. So, for example, once I left the hospital, I went to Italy, because I'm from Italy. We live there. We live here now, but we used to live there, so our house there. And we went there with Mum, and my appearance issues with my spots, right? And I had a lot of spots here when I went to, I don't know why, and I had a scab. It ended up being a scab, and it was a really big scab. And before, going to the hospital, so 3 months before that, I would have, panicked, not left my room, put a lot of, you couldn't cover it with makeup, so I would just cover it with something, with giant, plaster, I don't know, but I would have panicked absolutely, it would have been a huge tantrum, and it would have been a really big problem. And, I left the hospital, I had that, and it was hard, because it was ginormous. And I thought, oh my God, it was a really big test, and I thought, well, I mean, I can either panic, or I can, think about it. And I wasn't very worried. I thought, oh, what am I going to do? And I thought, wait a minute, be your own therapist. So what I did, well, I thought, well, we need groceries. So instead of Mum going out to buy them, it didn't need that many, so we didn't need the car, and the store was quite close. So I thought, okay, I'll go. Okay, I'll walk in a city, in Pisa, walk to the store, crowded store, get all the thing, pay the cashier, talk to the cashier, do it, and come back and see, like you've done all this time in the hospital, see, how people reacted. And of course, well, everyone reacted like everyone reacts with any sort of person. It was just normal conversation. And that sort of really helped. And it's those sort of things. And it's been minor ever since. I've had cuts, I've had things like that. But I think the important thing, and I do realize that another point is that this isn't really a normal situation with COVID. So especially if you have body images with your face, it's quite hard, because everyone's wearing face masks. There's worries about that. With OCD as well, it's a big problem. I know Mum was worried when COVID started, because she thought, oh, they've got to wash their hands, and they've got to worry about germs, viruses. But they've got to worry about that. Is it going to come back? And it didn't. but it might have. And you know, that's fine. If you have a relapse, you shouldn't feel bad. You should go, okay, you should recognize. First step is to recognize it, even when you haven't, even when it's starting out. Recognizing it, okay, I think, you know, I didn't used to do this. Why am I doing this? What's going on? And then go, realize that it's not shameful. It's not you being weak. It's not something you should be ashamed of. It's not something that people are going to mock you for. And if they do, you should pretty much do. You know, if people do that, they're not people that you should be with, because it's quite hard. And so just go, okay, I need help. And getting help is really brave, right? It's the opposite of not being brave, because it's recognizing, I think one of the bravest things you can do is recognize that you have a problem and solve it. And going to solve it is even braver than that. So you getting help is actually incredibly brave, and it's a really important thing, because it's really hard to go through it on your own. Some people have, I'm sure some people can, but for the majority, I couldn't. For the majority of people, it's pretty much impossible to go through it on their own. So you get someone to help, then it's better, right? And seeking help is the first step, right? And it's the same with relapse. Your therapist, you know, your parents, whoever, your significant other, whoever you're with, people that help you, they're not going to be ashamed. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to be ashamed of you. They're not going to go, oh, you know, oh, this is awful. They're going to go, okay, that's fine. And there was really stress to me. It was, you know, stressed as in reiterated. To me, when I was about to be discharged, you know, my therapist said, you know, Elias, it's okay if you do get a relapse. We've seen it lots of times. We're not going to criticize you. We're not going to judge you. It might happen. It might not, but it might. And it hasn't. Luckily for me, it hasn't. But you know, if it had, it would have been fine. And it's things like that people can get really caught up on, and they think that, you know, they're not as big a person, they're not as brave, they're not as you know, as, and I had this problem, right? I had this problem where I thought, well, I'm not worth as much because, you know, I can't even get my head in control. You know, I can't even control my head, can't even control my thoughts. And you're going, well, would you do the same way? Mom used to say this, and it's really true. You know, she used to say, well, if you broke your leg, would you go, oh, I can't even control my leg, you know, it's broken, I can't heal it, can't think it. And it's not, it's the same, right? Essentially, it's some part of you, it's probably even worse, because it's the most important part of you is your brain, right? You know, semantics are hard, whatever, but you know, who you are is your brain. And so for that to be, in a sense, broken or not working as you were, not being you, is a really big thing. And it's not, there's nothing wrong with getting help for it, right? And so being your own therapist, sorry for the detail, but going back to being your own therapist, it's really important to realize that, you know, doing these sort of small things and realizing that, wait a minute, okay, I see a problem. The problem is that I'm getting exposures in a while, or the problem is that there's a situation which is stressing me out. Okay, I'm going to solve it. And like I was saying with COVID, actually, it's quite hard, because what I used to do, for example, is I used to go out. So, for example, if I had a spot, right, like this, or that, I used to go, okay, right, I'm going to call a friend and go, do you want to do something? Or I'd video call a friend, or I'd go out in the street, or go on a walk, specifically because I had a spot. Because you're going, okay, I have a spot which I didn't used to like. Well, let's do something so that people see me when I am in this situation, when I have a spot, when I have, you know, something on my face, when my hair's all messy, stuff like that, right? I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do it on purpose so that people see me, but I think, wait a minute, they're not judging me, because of course they don't, right? And so it's doing things when you're most stressed that is the key thing. And I do realize that it's quite hard, but once you do it, it'll be easier and easier. And you'll feel really proud. And I still feel proud, to be honest. And I still call mom sometimes and I go, oh, you know, something fell on the street and I just ate it or whatever. So this is the OCD, and I did an example. I'm going to do the same in case people didn't see it in the podcast this morning. We were on a plane. This was before COVID, 2019. We were on a plane with mom. We were quite hungry, so I just had a packet of crisps. On the plane. And some crisps fell on the floor of the plane. And I just, you know, I was like, oh, I picked them up and ate them, right? And I say that quite nonchalantly now, you know, quite, oh, you know, I did that. But it was, for me, mum just looks like, what? I said, you couldn't do that before. And you couldn't do that before I had OCD either. And it's that point of exposures pushing you a bit further each time. So normally you have some, you guess your limit of this here, right? But when you have OCD or BDD, your limit of stress limit, the limit you're comfortable with, falls way below. So let's say it's here, right? So exposures, so you get your stress level, so it goes, it builds up, then it goes here, right? And then you repeat that, and then your stress limit slowly moves back up to what it was, to what it used to be. You know, it doesn't matter how long it takes, slowly moves back up, slowly, and it gets to about here. But the key thing is you don't stop, so you keep going. So you keep doing exposures, you keep doing it. So your stress limit or your limit goes up to above what it used to be, so that if you do sort of relapse or a little relapse, so you don't feel as comfortable, you're still at the same level that you were before you developed the illness. And the bonus is that if you don't, you know, if you don't, and if you do, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you don't, the added bonus is that you can actually do more things that you could before. And it was with me. So I didn't used to like wearing sort of baggy clothes, stuff like this. I wear quite tight clothes. I used to go through phases though, then I like sort of this kind of clothes and this kind of clothes and this kind of clothes. And this was before I even had sort of BDD. And OCD as well, it was the same. I couldn't really touch things on the floor, I couldn't eat things from the floor, even before I had OCD, right? And so now I can, you know, a friend can call me, oh, Elias, do you want to do something? Do you want something like that? I'll go, sure, put something on, whatever, and we'll go. And it'll be fine. Or if the other day I went out and I had and my t-shirt was stained. And before I would have gone, oh, I can't do it. Even before, you know, OCD or BDD, oh, they're going to judge me. They're going to think, you know, they're going to, oh, they've got a stained t-shirt. Oh, and I thought, actually, no, I'm going to go. And it wasn't even that big of a stain. You couldn't even see it. But of course, in your head, it, you know, gets amplified. I thought, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with the stain on purpose. I'm not going to change. And it was fine, of course, because no one's looking at other people's t-shirts and go, oh, they've got a stain. They've got, you know, no one really cares in the end because you're being out with your friends and you're having fun. And it's that sort of mentality that goes, okay, let me find things. And I realize this might be hard to do at the start, but then it gets to the point where I'm now comfortable with going, well, I'm eating something, you know, a cookie or whatever, and I'll be eating it and I'll just drop it. I'll drop it on the floor, drop it, and I'll pick it up. And of course, nothing happens, but it's the sort of thing pushing yourself to what you can do, to the limits of what you can do, and keeping that up, because it's really important that you just realize that, well, the more you do it, the easier it gets, right? It's a bit like practicing a musical instrument. I used to play, but I don't play anymore. But you know, the more you practice, the better you get at it. And it's the same. The more you practice, the more you do things, the more natural they become. And I don't know, you know, and I think for some people it doesn't, you know, never really goes away, and instead of worried about it. And for those people, it's even more important to you know, to sort of be on the guard in the sense that to get to the point where it's natural for them to do exposures, because, right, well, you're pretty much fighting the illness every day. You're not keeping it at bay, but you're, you know, nullifying it every day. And every day you go back and you do it and you do it. And if it becomes natural, then you don't even have to think about it. So there's one less thing to think about related to the illness, right? So you don't have to think, oh, you know, I have to do an exposure today, I'll do this. I have to do an exposure today, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, it's still kind of still reminds you of the illness, right? And so basically, if you do it every day, you do stuff like that, then it becomes natural, and you go, oh, I did an exposure today. Oh, I didn't realize, but it helps, right? It helps because it means that you can beat it on your own, and you can do it as your own therapist, which is the thing that I think is the hardest. But you know, you can get to it. And I had a few notes written down, but the most important thing, I think, is that, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, is that on some days it might feel like I said, it might feel like it's you know, getting worse, but in reality it's if you think about it holistically, it's going to get better. And on some days it might get a lot worse, and you might think, I can't do any exposures today. I really, I didn't do any exposures today. I couldn't do them. I just felt awful. I didn't feel like I couldn't do that. And you might think, oh, what's the point? You shouldn't think that, because yes, I've been harping on and on about how you should do them every day. But if you don't do them every day, but you still try, the important thing is trying, right? The important thing is going at the end of the day and going, I tried and I managed. And it's not even the fact that you tried, because some days it really was tough. At least for me, some days it was really tough. And some days, trying consisted just not sleeping the whole day, for example. That was already trying, and that was already a lot for me to do. And so for some of you, it might be the same. Trying might be, okay, well, today I had lunch, and I had dinner, and I had breakfast, and that when normally I don't, and that's great. That's great, because it's steps, and every person is different, right? And it's quite hard to sort of realize that, if you listen to me, or if you listen to other people, you go, well, they managed to do it that way, but for me it's not been working. What can I not do it? No, you can. It's just that for every person is different, and it's really important to find a thing that works for you. And it might not, I've been going on about CBT, it might not be CBT. There's other techniques, there's lots of other techniques. And so it's really important to think, okay, well, I've been doing this, it hasn't been working, let me try this. But the other important thing is, have you been doing it right? Not wrong as in you're wrong like an exam question, in the sense that have the people been helping you through it, properly? Have they explained what it is? Are you doing it, in the sense that it's helping you? Because, for example, there were other people in the psych, well, there are other people, and I've heard from other people that, for them, they tried jumping in at the deep end like I did, but it just made them sort of relapse more, because they thought, I can't, and they couldn't. And they thought, oh, that's it, this is dreadful. And so it took them a lot longer. And that's fine. I consider myself very lucky that I managed to, do it in 2 months, to get better enough that I could be discharged from the psych ward in 2 months. And to do that initial step of taking out the scarf and the hats and just sort of being brave in that sense. But even me, for a few weeks that I had to put my hat back on, so I felt quite bad. But then I took it off again. I took it off in a few days and not months like I'd taken me earlier. But for some people, that's just not feasible, and it's fine. It really is. And it really is also fine to just realize that, what you might have been doing for a long time just isn't working. And so it's just time to shift to something else. And maybe if you think, okay, I've tried everything, maybe let me try one of the other ones again with someone else. Let's see if they can give a new perspective, or if maybe I can try again and I've just got a fresh outlook on things, and try in another way. Maybe do different sets of exposures if some of the exposures haven't been working for you. And so maybe try do little, maybe try more, maybe try and get friends to help you, family, things that I was very lucky, because I had very supportive family. I had very supportive friends who helped, and who listened, and who were there for me. It was there, but not everyone has that, and it's important. And there's lots of support groups as well. There's lots of support groups on the internet, in places, and in forums, and it's quite hard now because of COVID. But there are other people who have gone through the same process that you're going through, and they've gotten better. And that's the most important thing, I think, is to realize that things will get better. Because when I started, I thought, okay, well, when I started having BDD, I thought, well, this is never going to get better. I'm gonna end up in a psych ward for the rest of my life. I'm going to be at home for the rest of my life. I'm not going to go to uni. Not going to do anything. I'm never going to touch my dogs again. I'm not going to have friends, hug a friend, nothing. I'm just going to, and it was catastrophizing, right? It was high level catastrophizing. I thought, okay, I'm never going to do anything. And now I'm at uni. I'm with friends. I'm having fun. I'm enjoying things. And so it's really different to what I thought it was going to be. And well, now it's just a completely different me than I was before, right? And so basically, being able to look forward into the future when you're starting out. If you think you're getting BDD, or if you already have it, or you know someone who has, maybe you're here because you know someone who has, remind them. Or if you're through the process, or you think you're nearing the end of the process but you're not sure, wherever stage you are, it's really important to realize it will get better, and that there's people out there that can help you, but the person who needs to help you is yourself, and realizing that you're not the problem, right? Because lots of people think, okay, I'm the problem, it's my fault, I'm not strong enough, I don't have the mental strength. It's not it's not sort of you have to sort of separate yourself, like I said, from the illness. Sorry, there's as name is again. You have to separate yourself from the illness and realize it's not me, I'm not the one at fault, it's just happened. And it might be because of external factors, it might be because of this, it can happen because of anything. It can just happen, for no apparent reason, but it's not your fault. And it's really important to realize that, and to realize that, well, just try, and just give it your best. And even if some days are worse, it'll get better, and always have a positive outlook. And I know it's incredibly hard, but even if you don't have a positive outlook, just think, well, I'm going to try. I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to try it. Because for me, at least, that's what helped me the most. I realized, well, I'm already at the worst that I can be. I'm not seeing friends. I'm not doing anything. I'm in my room all day. I'm not seeing my parents. I'm not, nothing. I'm not, I'm just static, And then I realized, well, do I have anything to lose? Well, not really, because but I have so much to gain. My life back, I can gain my life back. So if you get to that point, even if you don't get to that point, just realize, well, what can I gain? I can become who I was before, and sometimes even a more confident person, and a more strong-willed person, and a person that's just better prepared for maybe if it happens in the future, maybe for other stressful situations, right? Because it's not just for BDD and OCD. What exposures can prepare you and be able to cope with stress, and intrusive thoughts can prepare you is for life. Everyone has stressful days in their life. It's just the thing with life. If it's not stressful, I don't know what kind of life you have. But lots of people have stressful days in their lives, and it can prepare you for that. Intrusive thoughts, the choices that I do with intrusive thoughts, imagining they're just leaves and they just flow away. So you're on the bank of a river and you imagine the leaves just flowing away. You can do that with any intrusive thoughts, be it a personal problem, it's an exam, you're stressed about school, family, friends, pets, whatever. You can apply that, and most of the time, all the time really, once you've managed to let the intrusive thoughts go away, and you think, okay, that's it, it's gone, I've got a bit of respite. You can pretty much think, okay, we can think, because with intrusive thoughts, they take up your mind, right? So you can't think as much as you could. So it's very hard to come up with a solution, which then increases the stress because the problem doesn't go away and there's more intrusive thoughts, right? And so you have to break that circle. And it's the same for exposure. It's breaking the circle of reinforcement. It's a circle of reinforcement of just stress and worriness. And you have to break that circle. Once you break it, you go, wait a minute. Okay, for intrusive thoughts, you go, well, okay, well, I didn't think of that. Well, there's a solution. Well, I'm going to do that. And if I do that, then they'll get better. And it sort of just gets better, right? Breaking the circle and turning it into a ladder of options to make things better. And it's the same for BDD and OCD appearance worries, right? So you have a worry and you think, okay, if I don't see people, then I'm going to think I'm ugly. So you wear the mask or whatever, you wear that, or you don't show yourself, and you think, okay, but now I'm not stressed because I'm not seeing people. Oh, so I don't see them, then I won't get stressed, and it keeps going. Whereas if you break the circle and you go, okay, I'm going to get stressed because I'm going to see people without my behaviors to mitigate it. Well, you are going to get stressed, but it's going to get better. And at the end of it, you're just going to end up the person that you were before you were ill, and you're going to end up stronger and just, all around person that is more confident. And even if you end up the same person that you were before, that's still an improvement, because then you won't have appearance, or you have much less appearance anxiety or OCD. So it really is a win-win in every sense, and it is incredibly hard. But I think every single person that has BDD and OCD, and sort of lots of mental illness, and it's very stigmatized, but they're incredibly brave for dealing with it on their day-to-day, even if it's not sort of very strong, even if it's mild, they're very, oh yeah, great, thank you, Charlie. They're very brave, you know, to go through it on their day to day, and they're very brave because, you know, it's hard. It's at the end of the day, it's a really hard thing. It's probably even harder. It's probably one of the hardest kind of things to go through, sort of mental illness as opposed to physical illness. And so, but the other most important thing, and I've said it a few times, I'm going to say it again just before the end, is, you know, getting help is not shameful. It's not, you shouldn't be ashamed of it. It's not, it doesn't make you weak, doesn't make you a coward, doesn't make you any pejorative adjective. It makes you brave, really, really brave, because it's an incredibly brave and hard thing to do to get help. And getting help and then acting on getting help, so working to get better, makes you an incredibly brave person. And so if you're whatever step you are, and my advice is try and do exposures, and if you haven't got help, try and get help. And if you do, and if you know someone or whatever, just tell them that they're very brave and they can do it and that it will get better. That's my sort of contribution. I think I'm a bit early, but I think that's all I have to say, really. So if you have any questions, don't be scared to, you know, put them on the chat. If you don't, that's absolutely fine as well. No worries. So that's all good.